In a whirlwind of betrayal and misunderstanding, my life took a drastic turn when my stepmother falsely accused me of stealing her car. What started as a typical day quickly spiraled into chaos, culminating in my father kicking me out of the house based on her deceptive claims. As I faced the cold reality of being homeless, I was left grappling with the pain of betrayal and the struggle to clear my name. This is the story of how a web of lies shattered my world and forced me to navigate an uncertain future alone. Dad kicked me out because stepmom claimed I stole her car. 2 years later, they wanted me back for this. I, 25, have been holding on to this story for 2 years and am finally ready to tell it all. Fair warning. It's long, messy, and contains family drama that will give you some context. My mother left when I was a baby. She decided motherhood wasn't for her and gave up her rights faster than you can say deadbeat. My father stepped up, and for the first 4 years of my life, it was just us versus the world. Then comes the stepmother. Let's call her Karen, and you'll see why. Dad and Karen married when I was 7, starting from the beginning. Karen clearly had no interest in being my mother. She was more like a disgruntled roommate who happened to be married to my father. We tolerated each other when I was younger, but once I reached my teens, things went downhill faster than a greased-up bobsled. Now, on to the main event. My life took a dramatic turn 2 years ago when I was 18. I was about to take my driver's license test and asked Karen if I could use the car to practice. Dad was at work, and he'd always told me to ask a parent before driving. Karen agreed, probably because she wanted me out of her hair. I hadn't even left our neighborhood when bam, a drunk truck driver rear-ended me. And when I say rear-ended, I mean he tried to merge his truck with our car's trunk. I ended up in the hospital, broken and battered, as if I had gone 10 rounds with the Hulk. The doctors told me I'd be bedridden for 3 months. 3 months? I couldn't even scratch my own nose without feeling like I was being stabbed with 1,000 tiny knives. But hey, at least I was still alive, right? Wrong. Because that's when Karen decided to go all-evil stepmother. She informed my father that I had stolen the car to go joyriding with my friends. According to her twisted version of events, she overheard me discussing this grand theft auto adventure and specifically prohibited me from taking the car. But apparently, I, the rebellious teen, ignored her and snuck out anyway. You'd think my father would at least hear my side of the story, right? Nope. He walked into my hospital room, face as red as a lobster in a sauna, and began lecturing me about responsibility and trust. I tried to explain, but he was not having it. He was so caught up in Karen's lies that he couldn't see through them. Dance naked in front of him while wearing a neon sign. He told me I was no longer welcome at his house. That's correct. My father kicked me out while I was literally unable to move. My grandparents stepped up to take me in. They even hired a full-time nurse to assist me because, I couldn't even use the restroom by myself. For weeks, I tried to get my father to listen to me. I called and texted. I even had my grandparents plead my case. It was like talking to a brick wall, which occasionally grunted and said, Karen would never lie to me. As the weeks turned into months, I realized my father had made his decision. He chose Karen over his own daughter. The man who had once been my hero and raised me single-handedly had turned his back on me due to some lies told by his wife. I will not lie. It broke me. I cried more tears than I thought was possible. There were days when my emotional pain hurt more than my physical injuries. But you know what they say, what does not kill you makes you stronger. Or, in my case, what doesn't kill you makes you extremely angry. Fast forward to last week. I'm currently in my 2nd year of college, thanks to my grandparents' financial and emotional support. I hadn't heard from my dad or Karen in 2 years, and I was fine with that. I had accepted that my father was no longer in my life and was focusing on my own future. Then, unexpectedly, I receive a message from Karen. She said she and my father were renewing their wedding vows in a few weeks. And get this, they wanted me to come. I nearly choked on my coffee when I read that after 2 years of silence, they decided to play Happy Families. Karen stated, and I quote, that your father will contact you within a few days to inquire about it. Formally, one of the main reasons he wants you there is that some of his business associates will be present. They've seen family photos on his desk and learned he has a daughter. It would be strange to explain why you are not attending such an event. So let's get this straight. They kicked me out. Ignore me for 2 years, and now you expect me to show up and pretend everything is fine? Because it would be weird for my father's business associates. Oh no. I did not respond to Karen's message. I was too preoccupied with picking my jaw up off the floor and trying to process this woman's audacity. But Karen, being Karen, couldn't leave things alone. A few hours later, she contacts me again. This time, she abandons the fake nice act and goes full mean girl. She describes me as an ungrateful brat who does not know how to behave. Says I'm trying to demonstrate how low I can go by not jumping at the chance to play happy families with them. But this is where she truly crossed the line. She threatened me, saying that if I didn't attend their vow renewal, I'd lose any chance of inheriting my father's business or money. She would make sure of it. Now let me clarify. I don't care about my father's money or business. I'm creating my own life, and I don't need or want anything from others. But the fact that she believed she could manipulate me with threats was the final straw. I blocked both of their numbers. After that, I assumed that would be the end of it. But nope. Karen, as persistent as a cockroach, found my email address and tried again. This time, she switched tactics. She explained that the vow renewal was more than just a family event. It was also related to my father's work. She claimed he desperately wanted me there, but she couldn't help but make more threats and insults. That was when I snapped. 2 years of pent-up rage and frustration bubbled to the surface. I decided that if they wanted to air our dirty laundry, I'd put on a show that they wouldn't forget. I wrote a lengthy, detailed post on social media. I spilled everything: the accident, Karen's lies, my father kicking me out, the 2 years of silence, and now they're audacious. Demand that I play the role of obedient daughter for the sake of appearances. I attached screenshots of Karen's messages as proof, and because I was completely done with their BBS, I tagged not only my father and Karen, but also some of his work friends whose profiles I recognized. To be honest, I felt a strange sense of satisfaction as I hit post after 2 years of being silenced, my truth ignored and twisted. I was finally sharing my side of the story. The post went viral within hours. It had been shared several hundred times. Comments poured in, the majority of which were positive toward me and negative toward my father and Karen. It was like watching a wildfire spread while I held the matches. My grandparents called me the day after I made the post. They sounded concerned, which immediately set off alarms in my mind. My grandmother said, "Sweetie, we need to talk about that post you made." It turns out that my little act of digital rebellion had serious real-world consequences. My father's company was in the middle of a major merger with an office supply company. It was supposed to be a massive transaction that would propel his company to the next level. But now, the merger was in jeopardy. Apparently, word of my post spread like wildfire among the business community. Some of the individuals I tagged were involved in the merger negotiations. My father's reputation had taken a huge hit. What kind of man kicks out his injured teenage daughter because his wife lied? Is this not the type of person you want to do business with? My grandparents said my father was devastated. The merger he had been working on for months was likely to fail. His business partners didn't return his calls. His reputation, both personal and professional, was ruined. And just like that, my satisfaction turned to ash in my mouth. Don't get me wrong, I was still upset with my father and Karen, but I never intended to potentially ruin his business. I just wanted them to feel a fraction of the pain and humiliation they'd caused me. My grandparents believe I went too far. They stated that, while they understood why I did what I did, involving my father's business associates was too far. They pointed out that it was primarily Karen who had been cruel to me, and that by potentially jeopardizing my father's business, I could have harmed many innocent people who worked for him. Now I'm sitting here, staring at my laptop screen, wondering if I've made the biggest mistake of my life. On the one hand, I believe they had it coming. They hurt me, ignored me, and then had the audacity to demand that I play happy families for appearances. Don't I have the right to share my story? But on the other hand, did I stoop to their level? Am I no better than Karen in terms of causing harm to others in order to achieve my goals? I never intended to jeopardize my father's business or harm his employees. I was extremely angry and hurt. I wanted them to feel some of the pain as well. I took the post down, but the damage was done. Screenshots last forever, and the business world is buzzing with gossip. I feel like I've opened Pandora's box and don't know how to close it. Reddit, here. I'm laying everything out for you to judge. Did I go too far in my pursuit of justice, or did they have it coming too long? Did not read. My stepmother lied about me stealing a car, which led to my father kicking me out while I was bedridden from an accident. After 2 years of no contact, they insisted that I attend their vow renewal for appearances. I exposed their behavior on social media, potentially jeopardizing my father's major business merger. Eat it. Wow. This exploded overnight. I'm overwhelmed by all of the responses. I've been reading through them and attempting to process everything. A lot of you have asked for more information, so I'll try to answer some common questions. 1. Yes, I believe Karen gave me permission to take the car. I specifically remember asking her because my father had instilled in me the importance of always asking before getting in the car. I'm not sure why Karen lied. I've been asking myself that for the past 2 years. Perhaps she saw an opportunity to put a wedge between me and my father. Perhaps she panicked and told lies to protect herself. I honestly do not know. 3 facts about the accident. Yes, I've fully recovered now. It was a long, painful process, but I am physically fine. Emotionally, that's more complicated. Several people have asked about legal action. To be honest, I was so focused on recovering and then adjusting to my new life that I never gave it a second thought. I am not sure what grounds I would have anyway. 5. Many of you have suggested that my father may not be as innocent as I make him out to be. You have given me a lot to think about there. For those curious about Karen's children, she does not have any. It was only me. 7. To the person who inquired whether this was in the United States. Yes, it is. I'm still trying to process everything that has happened. Your comments have given me plenty to think about. I'm thinking about reaching out to my father, but I'm scared. What if he still does not believe me? What if he's angry about the post? I'm not sure if I can handle being rejected by him again. I'll provide an update if anything significant occurs. Thank you for your input. Even those who called me an asshole posted here because I genuinely wanted to know if I had gone too far. And you all have given me a lot to think about. You can also edit. Holy cow, this has grown far beyond my expectations. I can't keep up with all of the comments, but I read as many as I can. Your stories about similar situations are both heartbreaking and comforting. It helps to know that I am not alone in dealing with family drama like this. To address a few additional common points. 1. No, I do not intend to take legal action against the drunk driver. The last I heard, he had been arrested and charged. He is serving time for those who are asking about my mother. I know nothing about her. She has never tried to contact me, and I have never tried to find her. In my opinion, this is the end of the story. 3 things about my father's business. It is a paper company. Considered Dunder Mifflin, but successful. I don't know much about the merger other than what my grandparents told me. 4. Several people have pointed out that my father's decision to believe Karen over me is a form of abuse. I've never considered it that way before. It's giving me a lot to process. 5. To those who provide legal advice, thank you, but keep in mind that this is Reddit, and the laws may differ from where I am. I appreciate the thought, though. 6. For those asking, no, I do not want to attend the vow renewal, even if I could bear seeing them. I do not want to be their prop. I'm still torn about what to do next. I'll provide an update if there are any major developments. Thank you all for your encouragement and advice, as well as for sharing your personal experiences. Update 1 describes the aftermath of exposing my father and stepmother, as well as an unexpected turn of events. I never expected my threat to go off the way it did, and the fallout has been intense to say the least. I'd like to thank everyone who commented on my original post. Your perspectives gave me a lot to think about. It has been an emotional roller coaster, and your input has helped me get through it. So, where to start? I guess I'll start with what happened immediately following my previous post. I awoke to a flood of notifications the day after I posted. My phone was filling up with messages from friends, distant relatives, and even people I hadn't spoken with in years. My post had spread beyond Reddit to other social media platforms. It was surreal to see strangers dissect my personal drama on the internet. The weight of what I'd done struck me hard in the heat of the moment. Exposing my father and Karen felt justified, even satisfying. However, in the cold light of day, I began to question myself. Have I gone too far? Was I any better than them, displaying our dirty laundry for all to see? I decided to remove the post from everywhere it appeared, including Reddit. It felt similar to closing the stable door after the horse bolted, but I had to try. Then came the hard part. I unblocked my father's number. My heart was beating so hard that I thought it was going to burst. I stared at his contact information for what seemed like hours. My thumb is hovering over the call button. In the end, I couldn't get myself to call. Instead, I texted. I didn't exactly apologize, but I did explain why I'd made the post and how hurt and angry I was. I told him that I didn't mean for it to affect his business. All I wanted was for him to understand how much his actions had hurt me. Then I hit send and experienced a minor panic attack. I expected him to be furious and send me a slew of angry messages, or to simply ignore me. What happened was not what I had expected. My phone buzzed with a response almost immediately. My father's message was brief, but it took the wind out of me. He claimed he deserved everything that had happened because of what he had done to me. He did not blame me for how I reacted. I must have read that message 100 times, trying to make sense of it. This was not the reaction I expected. Where was the outrage? What about the denial? It was as if I had been preparing for a battle, only to discover that no one was on the other side, leaving me confused and emotionally drained. I called my grandparents. They, more than anyone else, could make sense of this. And wow, did they have some revelations for me. It turned out that my father had been regretting his actions for a long time. According to my grandparents, he began doubting Karen's version of events just a few weeks after kicking me out. But by that point, he felt he'd burned bridges with me. He was too embarrassed to reach out. I was afraid of rejecting him in the same way he had rejected me, and Karen had mentioned that the vow renewal was partly a business event. Yeah, that was an outright lie. It was supposed to be a small and intimate ceremony. My father's business associates were not even invited. In fact, my father had genuinely wanted to invite me as a way of repairing our relationship. He'd been working up the courage to contact me on his own when Karen stepped in. Learning all of this felt like the ground shifted beneath my feet. Everything I thought I knew, including the anger and resentment I'd harbored for 2 years, felt less solid. I was still hurt and angry, but they were mixed with confusion and an unwelcome spark of hope that lingered for days. I was a mess. I kept turning things over in my head, trying to make sense of it all. In the end, I realized I couldn't simply ignore what had happened. There were too many unresolved issues and unanswered questions. I needed closure in one way or another. So, with my heart in my throat, I asked my grandparents to schedule a meeting with my father. They were thrilled. I believe they've been hoping for a reconciliation since everything went down 2 years ago. They promised to set everything up and be available for moral support if I needed it. Walking into that house was one of the most difficult things I'd ever done. My palms were sweating, my heart was racing, and it took everything I had not to turn around and run. But I did it. I walked in and there he was, my father. I thought the man who had been my hero for so long had abandoned me. He appeared old, as if he had aged a decade in the 2 years since I last saw him. For a moment, we simply stared at each other, unsure what to say. To my surprise, my father burst into tears, sobbing so hard that his body shook. I'd never seen him cry before, not even during his parents' funerals. It was as if a dam had broken. Between sobs, he told me how sorry he was for not believing me and how Karen had manipulated him for years without his knowledge, how he had begun to see through her lies. But he was too cowardly to admit he was wrong, how much he regretted choosing her over me, and how he'd been miserable every day since he told me about how he'd seen the screenshots I'd posted of Karen's messages about the vow renewal, and how it had finally opened his eyes to who she truly was. They'd had a big fight, with Karen finally admitting everything, the lies about the car accident, her attempts to drive a wedge between us. I found out that they were getting divorced. Karen had already moved out of the house. My father said he could not bear to look at her. after realizing how much pain she had caused and how her lies had torn our family apart. The business merger was indeed off the table, but my father stated that he no longer cared about it. He only wanted to make things right with me if I let him. I sobbed uncontrollably. We talked for hours, reliving old hurts, clearing up misunderstandings, and attempting to reestablish some kind of connection. Yes, we began to understand each other more. However, 2 years of pain and silence cannot be erased in a single afternoon, regardless of how emotional. I told my father that, while I appreciated his apology, I was not ready to let everything go. I explained how much it hurt to be rejected, to have him choose Karen over me, how it had shaken my trust in him, and in relationships in general. He listened, and when I was finished, he agreed that we couldn't simply return to the way things were. He said he was willing to do whatever it took to repair our relationship, even if it took years, and I never fully forgave him. We left things open and ended the day. I wasn't ready to commit to regular meetings or fully reintegrate him into my life, but I also wasn't ready to close the door completely. We agreed to take things slowly in the coming weeks to carefully gauge our progress. I did a lot of thinking, including late-night conversations with friends, grandparents, and my therapist. After weeks of internal debate, I finally made a decision. I decided to try opening the door just a crack to see what would happen. Not to dive in headfirst, but to enter slowly and carefully, prepared to pull back if the waters became too rough. I called my father and told him my decision. His voice was full of relief and cautious hope. We agreed to begin with small steps, weekly phone calls, and perhaps a monthly coffee meetup. Nothing too intense, nothing too committed, just small steps towards rebuilding a relationship. I also told him that I wanted to try family therapy, not just for us, but for him as well. I needed to know that he was working on himself, trying to figure out why he had made the decisions he did. To my relief, he immediately agreed. He had already begun therapy on his own. He told me immediately after our first meeting. So we're taking it day by day, step by step. Our first therapy session is scheduled for next week, and I'd be lying if I said I'm not nervous. But I'm hopeful in a cautious way. I know it won't be easy. We have years of hurt and mistrust to work out. There will most likely be setbacks, and one or both of us will want to give up. But we're trying. And right now, that feels like enough. I haven't heard from Karen since all of this happened, and I'm actually relieved. I'm not ready to deal with her, and I'm not sure I ever will be. My father assured me that I didn't have to see or speak with her if I didn't want to, and I'm taking him at his word. All of this has made my grandparents extremely happy. They're trying not to push too hard, but I can tell they're excited about the prospect of the family being complete again. They've been my rock throughout this, and I'm grateful for their unwavering support. Looking back at my original post, it's difficult to believe how much has changed in such a short time. I was extremely angry at the time, so hurt. I thought exposing my father and Karen would make me feel better and balance the scales. And while I don't regret it completely, it did result in all of this. After all, I've come to realize that hurting others does not bring healing. It comes from facing the pain, being willing to be vulnerable, and taking the risk of trusting again. I'm not sure what the future holds. I'm not sure if my father and I will ever have the same relationship we once had, or if we'll create something new and unique. I'm not sure if I'll ever fully recover from the pain of the last 2 years, but I am willing to try to take things one day at a time, one step at a time, and see where this path leads. Thank you to everyone who commented on my original post, shared their stories, and offered advice. You gave me the courage to face this head-on and not run away from difficult conversations. Your words, whether tough love or gentle support, gave me the strength to take these first steps toward healing. I'll update again if there are any major developments, but for the time being, I'm cautiously optimistic. It's an odd sensation after 2 years of rage and pain, but I'm learning not to resist it too long. Did not read. I took down the post. I reached out to my dad. Turns out he regretted his actions and had been duped by my stepmother. We had an emotional meeting, cleared the air, and are now taking small steps toward rebuilding our relationship. Starting family therapy next week, cautiously optimistic about the future. Edit. Wow, I did not expect this update to receive so much attention. Thank you all for your support and kind words in response to a few common questions. 1. Yes, my father and Karen are definitely divorcing. The paperwork has been filed. 2. No, I am not going to take legal action against Karen. I just want to move forward with my life. 3. It's fine if you have questions about my father's business. The merger did not go through, but the company remains stable. He is concentrating on rebuilding relationships with his business partners. Many of you have asked if I am in therapy myself. Yes, I am, and it has been extremely helpful. 5. For those who are concerned that I will forgive too quickly, I appreciate your concern. I promise to take things slowly and keep my guard up.